And now, back to your voice with Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Angelo Henderson on News Talk AM 1200 and 99.9 FM, WCHB.
All right, his name is Mike Duggan. He has been the former Wayne County Prosecutor. He was the Wayne County Deputy Executive, and currently he is the CEO of the Detroit Medical Center and potential Detroit Mayor. We're going to kick around crime for a minute. Mike Duggan, welcome to Your Voice, first of all. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on, Angelo.
Man, every day I read these things. Carjackings, burglaries, assaults, weapons. Now they're robbing gas stations with AK-47s. One of the major problems facing the citizens of Detroit are crime. And I know as a Wayne County Prosecutor, why don't you just share, why don't you share your strategy? First of all, what do you think of the condition of the city like this?
The violence Detroit is experiencing now is not normal. This is not occurring in other urban areas in America. We're on our way to close to 400 murders in the city this year. Washington, D.C., with 600,000 population, is going to have fewer than 100. Wow. So when you think about 400 murders, if we had the same murder rate as Boston, we'd have 50. If we had the same murder rate as New York City, we'd have 40. This is completely out of control. And we know what the strategies are that were used in those other cities and that have been very successful. They've been replicated in lots of places around the country. We were doing them here when I was the prosecutor. We had great coordination between the police department, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, the U.S. attorney, the AT, the DEA. All were united in a single goal to take the guns out of the hands of the drug dealers. In my last year as prosecutor, we had the fewest murders in 30 years. But when you have 4 police chiefs in 4 years, it's very hard to get a strategy. And we need to get back to what we know has worked around the country, which is a concerted effort to get the guns out of the hands of the drug dealers.
So the key for you think, if we can get the guns off the street, the illegal guns off the street, really, that's the critical part?
Here is the issue, and here's how New York went from 2,000 murders to 400 murders.
Okay.
The violence there, like the violence here, results in significant part from the young people in the drug trade who get up in the morning, put on their jeans, put on their tennis shoes, and strap on their gun.
Okay.
And they give no more thought to putting on that gun than the jeans and the tennis shoes. So when a dispute arises at a corner, instead of a fist fight, the gun comes out and shots are exchanged. When you're driving by a gas station and you see somebody you have a beef with, the gun's in the glove compartment and it escalates to violence. What they've done in New York, Boston, Richmond, in many areas in this country is what we were doing here in Detroit in 2002 and 2003, which was aggressively going after the gun cases. If you commit a felony with a gun, it's 2 years in prison. If you have a previous felony and you use a gun, the feds will put you in prison for 5 years. And it is the partnership between the federal and the state side. But we went after it every single day. Chief Jerry Oliver and I used to meet with the parolees every month. When the parolees were released from prison, they were required to have the first meeting. Chief Oliver and I would go to the meetings and say, we don't have the resources to get everybody, but we're going to concentrate on the guns. In my last year in the prosecutor's office, we had the shootings in the city down 30%. And one of the biggest complaints our prosecutors were getting at the time from the drug dealers was my policy was unfair because drug dealers were starting to get stuck up because people knew they weren't carrying guns to protect themselves. You can drive down this violence as New York and Washington and Boston and Richmond and Los Angeles have all proven, but we need to have a concerted strategy of all the levels of government. We know how to do it. It's a matter of pulling everybody together.
But some people suggest that the carjackings is really like an economic crime. You think so? Or what's your thoughts on that? People don't have money and they see it as a quick hit.
There's no doubt that much of this crime is economic, but think about economic crimes. These criminals are making risk-reward decisions. Okay. They're saying, how much money can I make off of this, and what's my chances of getting caught? And if I caught, what are my chances of going to prison? When you look at something like a carjacking or any auto thefts as an economic crime, what do? We'll have 80,000 cars stolen in this city this year. They'll probably be stolen by 5,000 people, but they're selling them to 50 chop shops. Instead of trying to chase down 5,000 car thieves and carjackers, let's go shut down and seize the 50 chop shops, which we were doing when I was in the prosecutor's office. If you take the economic incentive out because it makes it harder to sell, you drive down the business. And that's why what I'm talking about in terms of strategy. You've got to be smart enough not to chase down 5,000 car thieves. You got to be smart enough to shut down 50 chop shops. And those kinds of strategies are how you bring violence and crime down in this community.
And like you said, and then if you can't sell the stuff, the car parts, then you basically decrease the value. I mean, the demand for it is what you're saying. It's economic.
And the same principle is everybody in this town has seen people stealing pipes or peeling aluminum siding off of houses. We can chase those scavengers all day long, but if we shut down the scrapyards buying the stolen property and enforce it on the scrapyards, and there's not an incentive to do it, now we can start to come back and start to preserve these houses. And that's really a big part of why I'm looking to run. I believe we can make a fundamental difference in the crime rate and the violence rate in this community with the resources that we have. Do we need more money? Yes, but we could do a lot more with the money that we have, and we can, I think, work together much more effectively.
How do you feel about the staffing of the police department at this point?
I think 2,600 police officers is an appropriate number of police officers. If you look at for a city of 700,000 nationally, 2,600 police officers is not a bad number. I met with two of the senior management, two inspectors and commanders in the Detroit Police Department last week. I said, do you need more officers? They said, no, but the way we're using them is the problem. You have probably less than 1,000 of the 2,600 in scout cars responding to citizen calls. What are they doing? They're in the offices dispatching. We've got officers in charge of maintenance decisions and budget decisions. We need to get the trained law enforcement officers licensed to carry guns out of the administrative jobs, fill them with civilians, and get them out responding to calls and driving down the crime rate. But I think we can do much more with the resources we have.
Well, I know in some cases, I know when former Chief Ralph Garvey used to say a lot of his hands was tied because of the union contracts dictating, who could do what jobs. And it's, for him, it was harder to just say, go out there and do that because of the limitations.
And what did they do? They imposed a 10% pay cut on the unions, demoralizing all of the officers, making them even less motivated to get out and risk their lives than they were before. What we ought to have done is say to these officers, you are putting your lives on the line for us every day. We'll pay you fairly, but if we're going to pay you as a licensed officer, we're going to shift you to a job where you're actually protecting the public.
All right, we'll be back more with Mike Duggan, who is considering running for mayor of the city of Detroit. We'll be back.